Hi everyone, thank you for joining this video. My name is Paula and I'm the Business Development Representative at GetQuorum. In this video, I'm going to be going over how we service our Florida clients for the electronic voting for their annual owner meetings. So without further ado, let's get into who we are as GetQuorum. We are an industry-leading provider of virtual meetings, electronic ballot voting, and meeting notice distribution services. We are a proud Zoom ISV partner, which allows us to have an API integration with Zoom for our virtual meetings. I'll get into the importance of that in the virtual meeting section, but for now, let's jump into some other things. We have over 1,200 clients and growing. These are located in Florida, in Toronto, in Washington, D.C., in North Carolina, Virginia, as well as British Columbia and Alberta. We are a growing team of 35 plus individuals who will always be happy to service you. We are a full service provider, pretty much doing everything for you. All right, let's get into some of our services. As you may already know, we do electronic advanced balloting. We collect voting certificates and opt-ins for you as well. We can also distribute your meeting notice package. We have high capacity printing and mailing, and we also offer surveys. Our high capacity printing and mailing is a turnkey operation, so you may choose to do your own printing and mailing, or you may use us for the printing and mailing as well. We also host virtual meetings and real-time votes. Our virtual meeting service is probably of most interest to HOAs, where there might be a change in the vote at the meeting in the case that somebody nominates themselves from the floor, or there's a change in the verbiage in the bylaw the members and owners would have to vote on. Otherwise, condos would most likely just be interested in our first 5 tiers of services. HOAs, I believe you might be interested in all our services. So, all right, let's get into it a bit more. We only require 2 documents. As I mentioned, we are full service, so we pretty much provide the full service for you. We connect you with a customer success representative who will set up everything for you. You do not necessarily need to touch our software unless you want to check how the votes are going yourself. So the 2 documents we'll need will be your ownership data in an Excel sheet file with your owner's name, unit number, email address, and mailing address if you require us to do any printing and mailing. We also will require a PDF file of your notice of meeting package, and this might be whichever notice of meeting packages you will want us to send out. Might be the 60/30 and so on, which we will discuss shortly. This leads perfectly to our timeline of events. So as most of you know, the Florida timeline leading up to the annual meeting requires the 60-day notice with a call for nominations, then the 30-day notice and announcement of nominations, and then there's the 14 days where you actually mail out the ballot, and then you have the day of the meeting. Our timeline for GetQuorum is, again, similar. We will follow all the Florida timelines, but there are a few extra steps that we take. So, and these extra steps depend on how you wish to use our services. If you're starting very early and you're looking at this video early on in your process, then perhaps you'll want to use us for the full shebang of the 60/30 and 14-day. So in this case, we suggest that we start collecting voting certificates 90 days prior to the meeting. This allows for the 30-day gap between the 60-day notice and the 30-day notice. So essentially, the 60-day notice. So it gives 30 days for owners to consent to receiving notices electronically from us. And then in that case, we can send as many as possible notices on the 60-day by email. Otherwise, you will have to still print and mail documents to your owners 60 days prior to the meeting. So that's why we suggest starting to collect electronic consents earlier so that we can get as many consents as possible and limit the printing and mailing costs. Same goes for the 30-day notice. We just want to kind of start collecting as many voting certificates before. If you're starting late in the process and you only have time for us to send out the ballots 14 days prior to the meeting, we really suggest still another 30 days ahead of that. So I would say 45 days prior to the meeting, we want to start collecting voting certificates, and then we would start mailing out the ballots 14 days prior to the meeting. Again, it's just to make sure as many as possible of your owners consent to using our services and sign the voting certificates, which allow them to vote at the meeting. One other thing to keep in mind is that 15 days prior to the meeting, we will cut off the electronic voting certificate submission, just so that we know to whom we are allowed to send electronic ballots and to whom we can have to print and mail the ballots. Okay. And then now let's jump into the actual services, the advanced electronic voting. So we gather voting certificates and opt-ins for you. On average, after our first email, we receive about 60% of the owners' consent to using our services and to voting electronically. So let me just go into my emails here. Here we are. Over here is an email, and it would say your association's name, of course, but this is just a demo, and so we're going here, Springfield Glen. It will just say, look, we are looking to collect voting certificates and consents to receive notices electronically. Please just click this button if you wish to consent. They would click yes, I consent. And then here we go. This would autofill our electronic voting certificate gathering form. And your owners would just have to click submit form. To keep them, this form is created by our legal team and it is compliant with the Florida statutes. So they should be all good after they click the submit form. What this does is it keeps this PDF form that you saw earlier in our dashboard system, and we will send it to you all to the property manager for audit and just for your own records. You can also, the owner can download their own personal copy just to keep for their reference. Okay. Now going back, the next step is collecting the electronic votes. That comes 14 days prior to the meeting. And essentially what we would do is, again, we would send out an email, and this electronic voting will increase participation and it will also be anonymous and secure. So let me just go into my emails here real quick. Notice of meeting, great. So here we are. As you can see, there is an option to register for a virtual meeting. This is in the case that you're on HOA and you wish to host your meeting virtually. Your owners can click this button, and what it would do, it would RSVP them to the meeting. Nothing is guaranteed here, but anyways, so sorry, in terms of guaranteed, I mean, if they didn't RSVP, that doesn't mean that they cannot attend the meeting. They can still, of course, attend the meeting. But moving forward, the notice will just say what is on the agenda of the meeting. All this verbiage can be changed depending on what you wish to put. So in your case, it will most likely not be saying can't make this meeting. It would say, please vote before the meeting, and then your owners would click vote now. This would take them to a landing page for our advanced voting tool. They can download their meeting package here, and then they can click this button to just get started. We send a unique ballot link to all your owners, so they cannot share it with each other. It's their own unique link. See, it's got my name and everything already auto-filled. So your owners do not need to remember any kind of passwords or connection items. They just need to have access to their email. They should double check that this is all correct. If it isn't, they should contact their property manager, just in the case that perhaps their property manager has some wrong information. As this is all the information we got from the Excel sheet file originally sent to us by the property manager. Okay, next step. Here we go. There's an election. The owners can click on this button to read through the bios of the candidates, or they can just select their votes. Well, they should probably read the bios before they select their votes, of course. In this case, there's 2 seats available and 3 candidates running. So we're going to select Mr. Burns, excuse me, and then Frank Grimes. And then we can click next step. As you can see, before I click next step, is that we have, we cannot select 3 candidates. We can only select 2. That's the maximum that we can do because there's only 2 seats available. Then we can vote on a budget. And then we can go back and review our answers. So let me go back here because actually I really don't like Mr. Frank Grimes. He's not a very nice person. So actually, I wish to abstain from my vote. I only wish to vote for the one candidate. It would let me know, are you sure that you want to abstain? Yes, I am sure. And it takes me back to the review page. All right, here we go. And then we click next, and it would autofill a secret and secure ballot. As you can see, my name is nowhere to be seen on this file. It just says the date and time that the file was submitted. And then I click submit. And my advanced ballot vote has been collected. I can download a copy for my own reference, but also a copy will go into our dashboard system, which we will later on send to the property manager with all the reports, as well of how the vote has gone, who has won the election, and so on and so forth. But there's also PDF copies for reference if you wish to scrutinize or essentially review it for yourself. Okay, going back to the presentation. This is pretty much it for electronic voting. And it's nice and simple, very easy. Just things to keep in mind is that we do want to start collecting voting certificates as early as possible. We are able to send out the 2 other notices for you as well, the 60-day and the 30-day. Thing to keep in mind is we cannot do nominations for the 60-day. That is something that your property has to collect itself. We can just send out a PDF notice to essentially save you printing and mailing costs. But our services are only limited to collecting voting certificates and electronic voting. Okay, and then if you are not interested in our hosted virtual meeting service, then feel free to switch off here. Thank you for joining us. We were very excited to explain all of this to you. Otherwise, if you're an HOA and you are interested in learning more about our hosted virtual meeting services, then please feel free to stay on. I'll be going over how we host those. So very similar to how we are on this meeting today, or how I am on this meeting today, this is what the view would look like for your owners when they join us virtually. Your owners would essentially receive an email, like the notice email that you saw earlier. I will actually backtrack just to give you an example. They will see this email. They can click on this register now button, and it would send them a link to a Zoom meeting. They click that link and they join us on Zoom webinar version. So there would be an option, there would be the speaker's view. So you would see the speaker, the person who's speaking, which is usually the chairperson. But you wouldn't be seeing all the other owners on the meeting, just because that can get a little hectic. So at the meeting, there's typically 3 types of participants. There's the hosts, which is us as GetQuorum. So we're using our Zoom webinar. We are on the meeting, our moderators on the meeting with you, taking care of registration, voting, and any technical issues. We also have the panelists. That is essentially the head of table at your meeting. Typically the board members, the property manager, maybe your auditor, legal, whoever might be speaking during this meeting. Then there are attendees, that's the rest of your owners that will be joining. They might be asking questions and voting, but they will not be giving speeches. All right, so GetQuorum will be taking care of registration for you. This comes from that Zoom ISV partnership I was speaking about earlier. We have an API integration, which immediately lets us know if somebody's eligible to vote. In this case, it's anybody who has submitted a paper vote in advance will not be able to vote at the meeting, or if they voted in advance electronically, we might not let them vote at the meeting unless they wish to choose to change their vote. If somebody hasn't paid their past dues, if the property manager lets us know that, the owner will still be able to attend the meeting, but they will not be able to vote at the meeting. All right, yeah, so we will manage this registration process for you. We'll let you know how many owners are in attendance and see if you're reaching quorum or not. So we have audience control. Pretty much from this panel, we'll be able to tell you how many people are in attendance of the meeting. But we also have audience control. As I mentioned, attendees will most likely not be speaking during the meeting. So we actually keep them muted just to avoid the noise of having more than 2-3 people on the meeting, and just to control the meeting a bit more. But we are able to unmute them if necessary. The host can do so, and I will explain that in the later slides. So the requirements to participate. So if somebody wishes to vote at the meeting, and then they have to be in attendance on Zoom to participate in motions, nominations, and elections, Q&A, and chat. If they are not on the Zoom meeting, there is an option to dial in and listen to the meeting via the phone, but they will not be able to participate and cast a vote. So for those owners, we suggest they submit a paper ballot to management as they did in the past. Okay, the way we pass motions in during this meeting, for example, do we approve the reappointment of the auditor? Can we get a mover and seconder? We would just use the raise of hand button. So we would just say, okay, can you owners please click the raise of hand button, and then this participants tool will pop up. We can see here Jason Shorey is the first, Kelvin Lee seconds. As Jason Shorey is on the top of the list, that means that he was the first to click the button, the raise of hand button. Kelvin Lee was the second, and that is how we take the mover and seconder. And then to actually very quickly vote on the motion, we would use the polling feature within Zoom to get very quick results, yes, no, and things like that. The way I see the polling feature within Zoom is that it's great for anything that in your in-person meeting would be done just with a raise of hand. Any voting that requires a ballot or a secret ballot, a paper ballot, we would be using our GetQuorum voting tool, which I'll get into in a couple of slides. Okay, the other way we use the raise of hand button is to ask questions. So as all owners are muted, we would say if there is an owner who wishes to ask a question during a Q&A period, please raise your hand. Owners would click their button, raise of hand button, and we could see Jason Shorey here has a question, and we can unmute him and give him the time to ask his question. Okay, and then how do we actually vote? So as I mentioned, we wouldn't use the polling feature for voting on anything that requires a secret ballot. So anything like an election, we wouldn't use the polling feature. We would use the GetQuorum voting tool. And so very quickly here, we can see the voting tool. So what would happen is we would send an email to all your owners who are in attendance at the meeting. They would be able to click the vote now button, and it would take them to a voting page that looks like this over here. I'm just going to move myself so that you can see a little bit better. This is the voting page that they will have available. As you can see, there's no vote currently open. So here on the left-hand side, this is what our GetQuorum moderator would be doing. They would be starting a vote. So let's just start a vote on an election for 5 minutes. Start. And once I click it, this page will refresh, and we can see now there's a vote in progress. I can go to vote. Whom do you elect as for the general director position? We can see that there's only one seat available in this case. Here you go. I pick my one person that I vote for, confirm. Awesome, my vote is now recorded. And then we can start another vote. And this is how it would be done very quickly. In this section, our moderator is also able to edit the votes. So for example, they might add another feature or change the wording of any of these choices. Next step, confirm. What this does is it creates a secret and secure ballot. A thing to keep in mind, if any of your owners voted electronically in advance of the meeting, they will still be able to vote at the meeting itself. What it would just do is it would override their initial vote, and their final vote would count, the one that they submit at the meeting. If they voted by paper, these owners will not be eligible to vote electronically. Okay. All right, and then we will act as the scrutineers. Essentially, we'll be the ones reviewing all the electronic votes. We will announce the results as well in real time. This is all happening in real time very quickly. So yeah. If there's anybody, as I mentioned, that wants to nominate themselves from the floor, that's totally fine. We can quickly add them to the ballot. We would also just unmute them by asking them to raise their hand if they want to nominate themselves. They click the raise of hand button. We know that they want to nominate themselves. We unmute them and give them a time to give their speech. And then we add them to the ballot. Things to keep in mind, as I mentioned, if somebody has voted by paper, they will not be receiving an an electronic ballot. Also, if they're not eligible to vote, they will not be receiving a ballot. And if they are logged in with the wrong email that's not on file in that Excel sheet file, then they will also not be able to vote, or if they're not on the Zoom app. Okay, and then moving on, how would your owners ask questions? We talked about the fact that they can do it with a raise of hand button. There's also a Q&A box where your owners can type in their questions at any point in time, and then you as your board would be able to choose either you wish to answer the questions live. You click the answer live and the question will pop up on everyone's screen. You read it out for the minute taker and you answer it, or you can type the answer in directly to the individual. So essentially, the Q&As are not visible to everyone in attendance. They're only visible to the panelists at the meeting. The reason being is sometimes people don't say very nice things, or sometimes people try to waste annual owner meeting time by asking questions that are not relevant to the meeting time. So to those, you can just type answers in directly and only answer live questions that are relevant to the annual meeting or are asked by multiple individuals. Okay, there's also a chat function. We disable it for all the attendees just because it gets a little hectic, and we have the Q&A option instead. The chat is just used for the owners. The chat is just used for the panelists, essentially your head of table. It's used as a private chat. You can just talk amongst yourself, for example, like saying who will be answering which question in the Q&A, or just how the meeting is going in general. And that is pretty much it. I hope that this all made sense. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And feel free to reach out to me on my email with any questions. My email is just paula@getquorum.com. So you can probably see my name in the little tab here. So it's just paula@getquorum.com. Feel free to email me. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Bye-bye.